Welcome to the Wanting to Wealthy podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Hogan. As someone who grew up in a pretty scarce environment and came out of college with a lot of debt, stuff, and insecurity, I thought that was just the lot I had to deal with in life. After several years of this, I decided that there had to be another way and gave away over half of my stuff, started working on my debt, and began looking at things through a lens that focused on my values and not what I thought others thought I should be doing. This podcast is all about the journey that happens from wanting to wealthy, and I'm so glad you decided to be part of it.
Welcome to episode 71, where I'm going to finally talk about predatory lending. I have alluded to predatory lending several times in several different episodes, and I figure it's about time that we actually look at this in some sort of detail. So I'm going to talk about a lot of predatory lending things today. So in episode 58, I told you, you don't need to listen to any of the episodes that I've talked about predatory lending before listening to this one, but you can always go back and listen to it if you haven't. But in episode 58, I told you that the predatory lending practices are anything that are unethical practices conducted by lenders that are unfair, deceptive, or fraudulent. So some aspects of this predatory lending include high interest rates, high fees, terms that strip the borrower of equity, and things like prepayment penalties and stuff like that. Well, all these forms of lending that I mentioned are technically legal. I would like to propose that all of these forms are considered predatory lending and why I think they are, and what you could do instead. So these are, I'm going to be talking about different types of lending and how they can come across as predatory. When we look at predatory lending, some of the red flags, I'm going to link an infographic and I'll show it at the end of the video as well, are things that I mentioned, but also we're going to include things like unclear pricing terms and salespeople who are really like pushy and rude, that I just mentioned, the prepayment penalties, really easy approvals. So if it seems like too good to be true, weird payment structures, really short loans, and people that are not willing to answer questions can also be red flags. And they can happen in any type of lending, but I've seen that happen a lot in the type of lending that I'm going to be talking about. So first and foremost, student loans. Okay. These are unsecured loans given to students, typically people who are barely functional adults. And I say that as a person who took student loans as a barely functional human, okay, who have no way of paying them back. These are loans that are well beyond their financial means because the idea is that we are going to use the loans to fund schooling and then get a good enough job to pay them back, which some of us do, but a lot of us don't. So while they're meant to help us fund schooling, many of us took out more loans than we needed and have been paying them for decades and or can't move forward in life for things like qualifying for a home. Especially because these types of loans are not dismissible in bankruptcy. So the goal of a financial aid office is normally to keep you funded for school. They are not there typically to make sure that you're financially solvent, to make sure that you're not going to go underwater with these loans eventually. They're there to make sure that you have enough money to keep going and hopefully get a degree, right? At least one. So they're not, so just finishing that thought, they're not there doing what's financially best for you. You will find people who work in a financial aid office who are trying to do what's best for you, but the financial aid office is there to help the school keep you funded so you keep going to school, not to help you financially speaking. So, for profit schools and private student loans, in my opinion, are by far the worst offenders. But all student loans can be part of this grouping, in my opinion. Okay. So things that we can do instead. Instead of taking out student loans, we can look for scholarships and grants. And this includes when we are applying for FAFSA. FAFSA breaks down what is grants and what is loans. If there is a way that you can get into school and only accept the grants, that's where you want to be. So, in many cases, you can go to school part time and work part time so you can pay as you go. Many of us have some sort of part time job when we're in undergraduate school. And in undergraduate school, it's the perfect time where we're capable of doing that work part-time, go to school part-time situation. Whether that be we start out as a transfer student at a community college, or whether it takes us 6 or 7 years to get through our degree. I can tell you that I took a 5-year degree and I finished it within 3 years and 2 terms, and no one cares that it took me less than average to get that degree. No one has ever asked me, how long did it take you to get the degree? No one cares. So if it takes us 7 years, but you come out of it debt free, that's the thing right there. So another thing you can do, talk to your parents about going to a school that's local to you so you don't have to pay for housing, or you pay a reduced amount compared to fair market value. Not all schools require you to go and live in the dorms. And if they do require, say, freshmen and sophomore to live in the dorms, maybe you go to school part-time, establish residency where you are, and then go to school full-time if that's what you have the option to do. But in an effort to not be paying high food expenses, not be paying high dorm costs, can you live at home? Can you figure out a way to get a tiny house? Can you live in an RV? What other things could you do to not have to pay market value for something like a dorm room? Another thing, if you can't live at home for any reason, as I was going with tiny homes and RVs, you could rent a large house so that you can have more roommates with contracts for each roommate to spread the cost of housing out. If you're renting a 3-bedroom house for, I'll say 4-bedroom house for easy numbers, 4-bedroom house for 4 people, and everybody's paying for $2,000 and everybody's paying $500 per person to rent that, that is way less expensive than if you're renting a 3-bedroom house for $1,800. Now you're paying $600 a month. So you can get larger houses that aren't that much more expensive, that then spreads the cost out a little more between you and more roommates. And again, that's also very often less than what dorms cost. In-state schools. In-state schools are generally less expensive than out-of-state schools or private schools. So public schools, like our state universities and things like that, sometimes you find schools, like there's one in Oregon, that doesn't charge an out-of-state rate, because if you're out of state, many schools will charge you more than if you establish residency. So that goes back to, okay, if I need to establish residency to get a lesser payment, I'm going to move, and I'm either going to take a break from school or I'm going to go to school part-time. So I've established residency for the year or however long it takes that state to require you for residency. And then I'm going to come in and go to school full-time at the in-state tuition rate. I briefly talked about it, but college transfer programs, so community college transfer programs, or high school college now programs are both great ways to get some schooling paid for with little to no out-of-pocket costs. So I see this in two fashions as an instructor at a community college. And somebody who has gone through a high school college now program. If you have access to take college classes or earn college credit for classes that you're taking in high school, do that. The school pays for them, typically speaking. So now you're getting college credit that you can transfer, you can use towards a degree, whatever you need to do at no cost to you. Okay, one. Two, figure out what kind of transfer programs exist because a lot of times I'm teaching students from the local university, but they're paying community college prices instead of university prices. And then the credit just transfers into their university degree. So it's another option to dual enroll if that program exists where you're going to school to make it less expensive or where your family member or your child is going to school. Trade schools will often pay for your schooling, especially if you commit to a certain amount of time in a union, typically as a journeyman. So, electricians, I think, have to commit to 4 years as part of their union, and their union will pay for their training. Um, I know with heavy equipment operators, it was 3 years commitment to the union and they were paying for your training. So a lot of times you can look at that for trade schools. Military service allows you access to schooling while on active duty or the GI Bill after you have completed your term of service. So that's another way to do it potentially. Some companies will pay you to go to school as part of their benefits package. Some companies will reimburse you so you can talk to the school that you're going to, figure out a way to fund it originally, hopefully with savings, and then get the certificate or proof of completion that you need. So then they'll reimburse you for it. Sometimes they'll even give you raises for having gone to school and learn and apply those skills to what you're doing in your company. And then last thing is consider if schooling is the right choice for you right now or at all. For many people, at all is an option. I went into school because I was told if I want a good education, I have to go straight from college or straight from high school into college. And I did that because that's what I was told to do. However, it served me in the long run because I focused my career to use the degrees that I have. However, when I was in my 20s, I spent most of it as a veterinary technician. And in the state that I live in, I didn't even have to be a certified veterinary technician to do the job. So I loved my job, and I was often in a situation where I could pay rent or I could pay my student loans for something that I was not using them for, but not both. So student loans, I have lots of personal feelings about, and the biggest issue that I have with these student loans is that they are giving them to people who don't have money to pay them back right now, who may or may not complete a degree to pay them back that will afford them the ability to pay them back, and that they're not dismissible in bankruptcy. So to me, there are many ways where we can get around that if we remove the stigma of how one has to go to college or if one has to go to college. Number two, on things that I consider predatory lending, credit cards. Again, these are legal, but they are unsecured lines of credit. So the problem with them is that is not that they exist in general, but that we oftentimes let them get out of hand because we don't understand how to work utilizing credit cards to our advantage. So the current interest rate on Discover card, for example, is 29.9%. Chase and Capital One are close to those as well. These can easily get out of control and therefore fall into the predatory lending realm. So ways to um, circumvent that. We pay cash so we don't get trapped into credit cards at all. That's an option. Um, that's the one that Dave Ramsey uses day in, day out. You pay cash, period. End of discussion. Uh, if you choose to use a credit card, you pay it off each month or you maintain a small balance, so less than 10%, with the understanding that you will be paying interest on the balance that you maintain, but knowing that that credit card is reporting to your credit reporting agencies and giving you a credit score. So the cost of earning said credit score is the small amount of interest. And when I say small, I mean small because you're just paying your phone bill with it, or you're just paying your dog food every month. Something small, not just, oh, I'm going to go on vacation and use my credit card and not have the cash to then pay off the entirety of the vacation when you get home. Okay. If you open a card based on a balance transfer, so 0% for a year or 18 months or whatever, only transfer the amount that you can get paid off in the promotion period. If you are given a limit of $5,000, but you can, or I'll do $6,000 for easy numbers. If you're given a limit of $6,000, but you can't make $5,000 or $500 a month payments to pay that off in the 12-month promotional period, don't transfer that much. If you can make $100 a month payments, only transfer 1,200 bucks. Okay. The reason I say that is because some companies will backdate your interest if you don't get it all paid off, or now you have what you have transferred on a high interest credit card. Another option is to only use prepaid credit cards so interest rate doesn't get out of hand, because you hand load the money onto the card with money you already have. So you're not spending beyond your means. You're not living beyond your means. If you are already paying credit cards, stop charging to them and start your debt snowball. And then make the decision, are you capable of utilizing credit cards to your advantage, or should they be tossed in your freezer or tossed in your safe and not touched again, um, to help maintain your credit score. Uh, Next, payday loans. These are short terms, amazingly legal loans based on your upcoming paycheck. I have no idea how these things are legal. It's terrifying. Going back to interest calculations episode 67, these loans average $15 in cost for every $100 borrowed. But because the loans are generally for only 2 weeks, that's 15% every 2 weeks, which equates out to 390% APR. It is legal robbery, in my opinion. If you can afford it in any way, shape, or form, do not ever go to one of these. Never, ever, never. There is no, but in this exception. I'm not going to give you a time when going to a payday loan company is a good idea, because it's just not. Call your lenders, your landlords, whoever you owe the money to, and set up a payment plan with them. Even with late fees, even if they're charging you late fees, this is less expensive than going to a payday loan company. So if you have to eat top ramen, if you need to go to a soup kitchen, if you need to go to fish, do that. Don't take out a payday loan. Walk to work, take the bus, turn off the lights, sit and use candles to have dinner every night. Sell something you own. Sell anything you own before taking out one of these loans. They are such a bad idea. I can't emphasize enough how skeevy these things are. Okay. If these options don't work for you and you feel like you have to take out a payday loan, you have no other choice, direct message me. I will help you try and figure out a way to avoid that. Like that's how passionate I am about these. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. No credit, no problem car loans. This is another one, totally legal. These are sometimes called buy here, pay here loans. The problem with these loans is that you can very quickly get upside down in them because they if you can't afford, and therefore you can't afford to sell the car. So what happens is you can't go to your bank and get a loan. So the dealership says, okay, we're going to lend to you. But oftentimes, because we've seen the interest, we've heard the interest podcast, we've heard the credit podcast, um, what happens is that you're not getting a loan through the bank because you don't have a good enough credit score. So a buy here, pay here place will charge you a larger interest rate than what a bank is even able to give you to do a buy here, pay here program. But when you're paying such a large amount in interest, you're not making enough payments to keep up with the depreciation of the car. So then you owe more than the car is worth. And then you can't sell it because if you sell it, you're still going to owe money on it. Okay. So they're very hard to get underneath. And you can't really do anything else because of that. So, um, here are my tips on this. Never leave the dealership with a car that you have not purchased or leave your trade without all of the contract details in writing. Okay. So you need to have signed paperwork before you drive off the lot with a car, because if you get in a car accident, your fault or not, now you're responsible for that. And you need to make sure you don't leave a trade there that they start like cleaning up, detailing, things like that. Because what tends to happen is that the terms of the loan that are not in writing, that were verbally agreed upon, change. And you can't do anything about it. Oh, look, you took our car and you scratched it, or somebody ran into it with a shopping cart. And so now you're going to pay more for it. Oh, look, we already started doing stuff to your trade. Now we're not going to give you as much for it, and you can't do anything about it. So never leave the dealership with something that you don't have set up in writing. This gives you the option to go, it's not in writing. I'm not doing this deal. But some shady dealerships will use this situation to change the terms of the deal and make you feel forced to take different, less desirable terms. Okay. If you can pay cash for the car, even if you have to pay $2,000, which is about $75 every week on a biweekly paycheck, to buy a junky car that gets you from point A to point B, it's way better than getting sent to collections and still needing to make payments on a car that you may or may not have, and then still needing to get another car. Okay. Find a friend or family member who's willing to take payments on a car, even with interest, that they will sell you. So maybe you can afford that $75 a week, and your friend has a, I don't know, 2000s Ford Focus. And they are saying, hey, if you put full coverage insurance on this, you drive it, you give me $75 every other week in a contract, in a contract, I'll let you make payments to buy my car. A lot of friends will do that. Um, if they say don't worry about the contract, do it anyways. But um, they'll give you that kind of help. A supportive friend and a supportive family member often will give you that kind of help. Um, if you're honest about what your finances look like and why this is a problem. Your other option is to take the bus, carpool, bike, walk, some other form of mass transportation. I know that the United States is not the best, especially in rural areas, for mass transportation. But do you know somebody who lives near you where you can pitch them $20 a week and ride with them in their car to a place that they're going anyways? Maybe they work next door, maybe they work at the same place as you. Even if you have to sit and wait for them to get off shift for an hour, it's worth it. So when I was in college, I went to Colorado and my car got totaled. And in that time, I didn't have enough money to buy another car. So I lived on the outskirts of town and I was going to the community college there and I was working in the middle of town. Um, I did three different things. One, I had my bike. So I would ride my bike the 2 miles into work. Um, I had a friend who drove right past my house on the way to community college. And so he would pick me up on the way to college. I had a roommate whose work was half a mile further up the road than my work. So sometimes I would ride with her. I would have to get up 2 hours early and go to work 2 hours early and sit in the break room and do my homework. But then I got a ride to work. And I did that for over a year because I didn't have another choice. I couldn't afford a car. And so it's sometimes a pain in the rear end, but it's worth that compared to you going and getting a loan that puts you upside down in a car. And if you get into a car accident or you can't afford the payments, now you owe this bill that you didn't have money for in the first place. So then you end up in bankruptcy when you could have just, did homework in the break room and worked for 2 hours or um, read or worked on your social media or whatever it is you do, right? Um, to keep yourself out of um, a loan like this. So these are the biggest things that I look at. Off, we're teetering on the realm of medical debt being in this same thing, but I can do an entirely different episode on medical debt if you guys want me to, and kind of what's happening with that. Again, just DM me and let me know if that's something you guys want to hear about. So, in conclusion, need to be very careful when we're looking at terms of any type of debt. Typically unsecured debt being some of the worst. So if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. Also, if you feel like you have no other choice, get a second opinion by somebody you trust. Ask the person that you trust, um, hey, I'm looking at this deal, I'm looking at this credit card, I'm looking at this schooling option. What do you think? Would you do this? And see what they have to say. Don't sign anything if you feel like you're being pressured. Be okay saying no and walking away. That's a huge one. Call your lenders to negotiate terms, and look for warning signs that I'm going to show you in this infographic right now. And I'll read it one more time. I read it this morning, or I read it at the beginning of the episode. Okay. um, is, and this will be linked in the show notes as well. It's 7 signs of possible predatory lending. So unclear terms, unclear pricing. If you're not 100% sure what your monthly payment's going to be each month, or you don't understand or don't know when, um, how much interest you're paying, things like that, that's a problem. Um, Anybody who's aggressive or rude to you when they're selling, oh, this is a limited time deal. If you walk away, you're never going to get this deal again. Walk away. Don't walk away. Run away. Anytime there are prepayment penalties. So if you're trying to pay off a loan early and they're saying, no, we're going to charge you if you pay it off early, that's a problem. Don't get that loan. Anything where it was so easy, where it's like, oh, $100 in a job and now you've got a loan, that's probably a problem. Anything that is an abnormal payment structure. So things with abnormal payment structures are going to be like, oh, you owe on a random day every single month, or you only owe every Third months are okay because those are quarterly payments, but you only owe every other month, like, or you owe on Tuesdays, like just weird things that are not once a month on the same day every single month, once a quarter, biannually, so twice a year, or annual payments. Anything else is weird. Anything that's really short, anything shorter than say 12 months for like a promo period. Anything shorter than that is going to be a payday loan or a cash loan, and those are bad. Or if you're asking clarifying questions and they won't answer them. If they want to answer them, run away. So, those are my thoughts on predatory lending. Let me know what you would like to hear about next.
Thank you so much for supporting myself and the Wanting to Wealthy podcast. For more free content, consider signing up for the monthly newsletter at wantingtowealthy.com/subscribe. Please share the podcast with someone you think can get value from it, and screenshot yourself listening and share it on social media. I would love it if you tag me at Wanting to Wealthy when you do. If you are ready to take the next step for yourself and your financial journey, become a community member at patreon.com/wantingtowealthy. The Wanting to Wealthy podcast was produced, recorded, and edited by myself, Ashley Hogan.